Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From the Mount, a podcast from Mount Perrin Christian School. I'll be your host for today's episode. I am Steve Kyle, and I'm excited to be in the studio again with another dynamic duo. I'm really excited about who's joining me today and the subject we're going to be talking about. First, she's already been on, depending on how many of you listened to, more than one of our podcasts in what order. But Viola Lucier, our head of our counseling department here at Mount Perrin, is with us. And then head of the most exciting place on our campus. And if you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But our preschool building is an amazingly happy place, led by an amazingly happy woman. But we've got Penny Harrison in the studio. Penny, thank you for being here with us.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, just so for our audience that might be listening that maybe doesn't know who you are, their kids didn't go through our pre-K, just give us a quick snapshot. Who's Penny Harrison?
Okay. So first of all, I will say I was a Mount Perrin Christian School parent before I ever worked here. Both of my children, grown now, boys, young men, went to Mount Perrin Christian School, so I have a long history. My oldest started preschool at Mount Perrin Christian School in 1997.
Oh, wow.
So I've been around a while. I taught in the classroom for 14 years, and I was a children's pastor for 18 years. So add those numbers together, it means I'm old.
Yes.
And I've been in this position. This is my third year as head of preschool. So
Great.
Love Mount Perrin and I love the preschool.
And
Awesome.
you really do such an amazing job.
Oh,
Seriously.
thank
really
you.
is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great place over there. Well, let's. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about where this particular episode comes from. So a while back, we were in an executive council meeting, which is our leadership here at Mount Perrin, and Penny kind of began to, you started speaking about something that to those of us in the room that I thought was, I hadn't really heard it exactly the way you had put it before. Really powerful. It was one of those moments where I'm like, our families need to hear kind of exactly what you just said. That's when I approached and said, hey, would you be interested in going on a podcast to talk about this? You were gracious enough to do so. And so I'm going to let you talk about it. We talked about play.
Right.
I know that sounds interesting for those of you, some people are like, yes,
Right,
that sounds exciting. But you talked about it from a perspective I had not really thought about it before, and I thought it was so important. And so I'm going to kind of let you kind of talk a little bit about what you shared with us that day.
Okay. All right. I'll kind of back up a little bit and just say that one of the things I do when I'm giving parents, prospective families, tours of the preschool, one of the things is I talk about the playground, which for children, that's just, they have a great playground. But really developmentally, there's a lot of thought put into why we have playgrounds and even what equipment's on the playground and what is happening on a playground, especially for young children. And it's all about gross motor development, and which leads to fine motor development. But specifically where the conversation came out about when I was talking with Executive Council is I was sharing that a lot of times when I'm talking to families and I'm asking families, what do your children like to do, when you don't have something that's coordinated?
Right.
And a lot of times it's the things that are happening in all of our homes. It's, they're playing this great game on the computer, or they're playing this great game on the iPad. And there are benefits to those things, for sure. But as I had those conversations, what I started realizing is there was just not a lot of time left in a child's day for free play, imaginative play. And I always said when my kids were growing up, I did not like the word bored. I actually thought that the word bored was a little disrespectful because you have so many things in your life. How can you be bored? But actually, when you look at it, the other side is our kids need to be bored every now and then because that's when they discover how their imagination works and play. So there was those discussions with parents, and then coming into again, this is my third year in the preschool, and over these last 2 years in particular, what I've begun to notice and I've heard from teachers is that we have children who don't know how to play. We're talking about 3 and 4-year-olds who don't know how to play. And so when my teacher started saying that, I said, I want to know more about what you're telling me. Like, they don't know how to play with others? No, they don't just know how to play. Yeah. To the point that we would have 3-year-olds go onto the playground and go sit down on a bench not run to the swings, not run to the slide, not run to the climbing toys. And so
like wondering what is that?
Right.
What is that tall laddered object?
Exactly.
Sure.
Right. And so we just began, I think for me in particular, and along with my teachers, began to ask the questions, why? Why is that? I think a lot of it, has been the last few years and you look at the kids we have coming into preschool. The
COVID
majority,
babies.
Yes. The majority of their time has been sequestered, right?
Yeah.
It's been kind of only in the home. They haven't been exposed to a lot of just, hey, let's go to the playground and play with any other kids that are just happen to be there that day. Forget just organized play dates or whatever, just kind of being out in the community and playing. And so it really stirred something up in me, really thinking about why is play important. Again, it's those gross motor development that leads into fine motor development. But when you really look at when you look at other creatures, right, that God created, they all learn to socialize through play. Right?
Sure.
If you've ever had a dog and you've had more than one dog, how do they socialize? How do they play fight, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And they play, and that's how they learn. And even if you only have one pet, that pet learns socialization within your family based on how you play with them, right? If you rough play, then they're going to be, they're going to be excitable. Dogs that are going to be really excited. So that too was another layer. Is that we have this group of children, again, because of the way our world has been for the last several years, who really have lost the art of playing. And so that's kind of where that conversation came about. And I became pretty passionate about, what are we going to do about that? So.
Yeah. And it's tough because it's this really interesting line because you've got parents who, no doubt many are listening, who are, this isn't it's kind of unfortunately the situation they were left in many cases. So it wasn't like this intentional, how do I make my child's life boring and controlled? Let me give them a device. It's because of COVID or no doubt you've seen a massive spike. But of course, we can't ignore technology and its involvement and how easy it is as a parent to be able to do that. It requires less kind of sacrifice in some ways. But
well, see, I see it more of the culture that we live in where, and prior to starting this podcast, you had mentioned we are made to work, we are made to rest and worship and play, right? We live in a culture that prioritizes work.
Right.
And that's it. So we don't know how to rest. We don't know how to play. But on top of that, to feel like I'm a good parent, which is my flesh, right? My flesh says, I want to be a good mommy because the mommy bloggers say that I need to be a good mommy. And then I see this other girl, her mom in this class, and she looks this way and she does this. So I should be doing that too. So therefore, that means I need to be scheduling dance class and this class and do this. And, we got to take Mandarin just because, what if we go to China one day? Who knows?
Right.
So you end up over scheduling your child and just not learning how to be, and especially be in a community which we are called to be in.
Right.
And so I think the loss of play really impacts actually much more than just that the fine motor skills, gross motor skills, and the individual. I think I'm seeing it as impacting villages and communities.
Sure, family dynamics.
Those dynamics.
Right, absolutely. And I think it just, again, we learn to socialize when we're with others, right? And children, I think for sure, every child needs to learn how to play by themselves. That is very important. Again, it's that, what do I do when I'm bored, right? How do I entertain myself? But they also learn so many social skills when they play. And here again, we see it so much in the preschool because a 3-year-old developmentally goes from parallel play to playing with someone. It is a milestone that we're looking for. So when we're watching them kind of come out of that parallel play and they don't know how, it means that they haven't been in situations where they've had to have a face-to-face with someone to play. And I don't know how deep we want to go into this, but again, it's the little child who runs to the playground, and it was more than one who would run to the playground and just sits down like they don't really know what am I supposed to do out here? Yeah. They didn't really know what to do. To the children who in the classroom even, hey, here's the blocks, and they just kind of sit down in front of the blocks like, what do you want me to do? So you do wonder if we are, because we have put so much emphasis on work, and work for kids is, hey, we have to do this thing. Here's a task. Right? Yes. It's a task. That you have these children, you put the Legos in front of them, and they are like, well, I'm waiting on you to tell me what the task is.
And then you see that translated into high school. Does this count for a grade?
Yes.
So how do I even start this? You didn't tell me how to start it. What do I need to do next?
Yeah.
And
with the blocks, you're like, just play with them.
Yeah.
Like, why'd you put that one on top of that one? Look at that.
Yeah.
Don't get crazy.
It is, but yes. we kind of, but it's, and I've read in kind of preparing for this is becoming kind of the norm.
It is.
That it's almost like, well, when I build, I'm usually sliding my finger on a tablet, and that's how I move stuff around, like as opposed to, and it's terrifying. And I know maybe that's a harsh word, but to bring up, but I think we're under. To me, the habits for the rest of their lives are being established when they're the age you have them with. And I think parents don't understand that in some ways. They're not realizing that, when they get to middle school or upper elementary, they'll learn how to do that. And I'm like, no. I don't know if it works that way. I think they're developing a lot of these things when they're 3, 4, 5 years old. And not that if they don't get it, then they're just forever lost to a life of isolation and a tablet in their bedroom and cats.
Yeah.
The van down by the river.
Yeah. But so Viola mentioned this rhythm that you had mentioned. Will you talk a little bit about this rhythm of life? We were talking about before we went on the air.
Well, I think, even as adults, we need to remember how God created us, right? He created us for rhythm in life, for worship, for work, and for rest. And I would argue that rest for children is play, right? And honestly, I'd kind of argue even for us as adults, some of our rest is play. And I think, obviously we could have a whole nother podcast on rest and Sabbath and all of that. Yeah. But God didn't create us in pieces, right? We are a whole person,
That's
right? We are mind, we are heart, we are soul, we are spirit, we are all of that. And if God in his creative order created us to be beings who needed to worship, who needed to work, and who needed to rest, I believe that he also created us to play. And I think that we're being short-sighted when we don't allow our children the room to play and the room to explore what that is for them. And here's the thing. You mentioned Viola, I've got to put my child in violin. And hey, listen, I think when you see something in your child, my oldest early on, I knew he was musical. He didn't get it from me. I can't carry a tune in a bucket. But I wanted to help him with that, right? But I also think we overschedule our children. We overschedule ourselves and we overschedule our children. And I believe long term, what we're doing is then we raise teenagers, we raise adults who don't have any room in their life for rest. And they almost have, I personally am that was me. I had to relearn, what does it mean to really rest? And what does that look like for me? And part of my rest is play because I'm extroverted and I love people and I like being with people, but we're not giving our kids room to kind of figure that out.
Right.
And to model for them a lifelong term that is a rhythm that God created them for.
Yeah. And I think the idea of rhythm, and I hope the listeners will pick up on that, the visual kind of for me that creates, because it's not this thing in isolation. I love the fact that you said that all of these, the fact that we're, mind, body, spirit, that God made us and it's really speaking to the whole. It's not, you can't really deal with each one in isolation because God, in the image he created us, his image, this as James Orr said, a mental, moral image where we have the ability to think, feel, choose, love. That's a part of that. That resting is such a crucial part of, I say the play in reference to that is such an important part of that. And I think that we're moving away from that. We're forgetting that part of doing that. I love to play. I mean,
I do
literally
too.
all day, every day, if I could play. And
Which was terrible when Steve was in the high school because it would be Steve and Viola playing all the time.
Yeah, like, Viola, we need to go back to our offices.
Right. I mean,
We need to do some work. Where's the work part?
Yeah, it is. Well, but we were resting.
Yeah.
And playing
for sure.
or whatever. So, all right. So let's flip this practical if we can.
Okay.
So I think you've kind of given, again, I think we could do another episode on probably where to go, but I want people who are listening to go, all right, like I get that. And maybe I'm guilty of that. Maybe I'm guilty of, I have a child who is there. What do I do? What do I do? Do I just snatch it? Do I visibly break the iPad in front of the child to send a strong? But
Send a message.
But what are some
Marketplace.
practical things, that you would say, hey, if you're listening and you're like, all right, what do I do? What are some things I can build into this? What would you recommend to the mom or dad who might be listening, who's like, all right, we need to do this. We
Right.
need to build in. How do I do it?
Right. I would say a couple of things to think about is always think about whatever I have my child doing, is it engaging as many of the 5 senses as it can, right? And if you're outside, you're engaging a lot. There's the smells and there's the feel of the wind and there's the crunching of the leaves and being outside. God gave us beautiful nature. Get your kids outside as much as possible. It's okay to be outside when it's cold. Let's bundle up. We can do it, right? It's okay to be outside in the summer. It's not my favorite, but do it. Be outside as much as you can. I think that's a very big practical thing. Let them run and play and just be kids. And
God gave us a massive playground.
right,
Exactly.
massive.
Let's
Listen,
use it.
And listen, when you live right here where we do, you've got Kennesaw Mountain in your
Yeah, you do.
backyard.
Isn't that amazing?
Just
Yeah.
go walk the trail. The amount of things your kids will engage in and the conversations you can even have are amazing. Just say, we're going to go on a nature walk. Listen, that's
Yeah.
a whole
Doesn't
day
have to
right
be
there.
complicated.
Right. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be complicated. We're all very blessed. I mean, all of our listeners are very blessed with we have access to so many toys and so many things that the kids can put their hands on. But again, let it engage as many of their senses as possible.
Yeah.
If it's Legos are like that, listen, they're feeling it, they're using their creativity, all of that. Listen, there's a place for the iPad and all that, but I would say limit that as much as possible. I think long term, again, I could go into a whole thing about even when they're learning to read, how being on an iPad a lot has really hindered their tracking. Of their eyes tracking.
We'll do an episode on
Right.
that, so listen for that.
Yeah,
We will. That's a good one.
Awesome.
Because that's a big one. And that is only really engaging 2 senses, right? So again, think about what it's engaging when you let them play. So I would say again, simple. Like and if it's listen, you don't like mess in your house, put it outside. Put some stuff outside, Play-Doh outside, whatever you can do.
Chalk on the driveway.
Chalk on the driveway.
It washes off.
Yes, exactly.
My driveway when my
Yes.
girls were young was like
Yeah.
the Louvre. Is that how you say that? Louvre, is that right? I don't-
Yes,
There was
exactly.
artwork out there every
Of
day, and I
course.
didn't care.
Of course,
And,
yeah.
and listen, companies coming over, that's
Right.
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 Rain,
and then
hose.
when they're with friends, let them have some unorganized play. Right? When they're with friends,
Preach
you
it.
know, you're going to say, "Hey, we're going to do this or whatever," which is great. But let them also have something that you haven't organized for them. Let them build the fort in the living room and whatever.
Yes.
Because here's, I'm an older mom. I'm a mom of grown kids, and I can tell you, the mess is going to go away one day. It will. Like,
You're gonna miss
let it be messy while it can be messy. It's fine. And one day you'll miss the mess, and you'll miss the noise, and you'll miss those are just some practical things.
And
I
then,
would
of
say.
course, certainly as moms and dads, play with your kids. That kind of unstructured playtime is a great way, of course, to build relationships, but also, again, encourage play with other kids. And I know now, when I was growing up, it was literally we would leave and meet neighborhood kids
Yes.
and play with them.
Right.
And I don't know if I'd recommend just turning your kids loose, obviously, but we know a lot of our families live in neighborhoods where they know the neighbor kids, invite them over, keep it simple, because I think it's always this, well, how much is that going to be to bring all the
Right.
kids and drive them to? It's free. Just
Right.
put them in the backyard,
Right, right,
Yep.
right,
and
yeah.
turn them loose. And
Yeah,
so,
and I would add to that, when my kids were young, all the moms, we would sit in our chairs in the cul-de-sac and let the kids just have the
Yeah.
run of the cul-de-sac.
But again,
community,
community, village. We
Yeah.
are meant to be
In
together,
community.
yeah,
right?
and relationship. And
be-
I think that is I mean, it's so important. And to me, not only is it super practical, but it's biblical. And when you look at that, I think it translates even later on into life when, these kinds of habits that we're developing. And if you're listening and you got a third or fourth grader and you're thinking, well, she's obviously talking developmentally about kids. No, I same thing. Take the phone away or still make them go out and play. It's not like it's too late to get them outside playing with friends and out there. And I think the difference we'll see. I mean, these parents and their expectations for their kids, let them play.
Right.
And they'll meet those.
Yes. And that's the biggest thing. I did not walk into this today thinking this, but as you were talking, just praying like God convict me or like reveal the things that I need to draw back on or change or add. And Penny, you really gave me some great things to think about today because they do go hand in hand. And I am an overscheduler. I feel like the more that I can produce, it's, data-driven parenting, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, the actual data that really matters is, does my child have a relationship with God? Not, did my kid get into this school or does my kid know Mandarin? It's, does she have a relationship with him? And that can be fostered through any of those three things, the rhythms.
Yeah.
So that's what I love.
Yeah.
Is that you've really shown that today.
It's great. All right, Penny. So thank you for joining us today. I'm certain we're going to have you back because you 3 times mentioned that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
And so we're going to make them
notes.
because I do. I think there could be a series where you could provide some really great information for parents who are hungry for great information. And so I think it's great. Thank you for being here, Viola, as usual. Thank you for being here. And listeners, you'll see and hear us again on our next episode of From the Mount.